All right, everybody, welcome back to Horn Takes. We're going to run it down. It's championship weekend. All the conference championship games go down this weekend. So we're going to talk about every single last one of them. Start out with the Pac-12. We got Utah at USC. Rematch of USC's only loss this season. They lost to Utah 43-42 in overtime earlier in the year. I believe it was late October. USC's coming in at a 2.5-point favorite in this one. I think one of the really big themes about this game is it is always tough to beat the same team twice in the same season. There's just tons of data that suggests that it's just hard to do. Even in times where one team has blown the other one out and just absolutely dominated, there's a lot of evidence and there's a lot of instances where they play again the same year and the team that got busted figures out a way to win the game. One that rings true really close to my heart is the 2001 Big 12 championship game. Texas absolutely destroyed Colorado earlier that season in Austin. 3 or 4 touchdowns, they beat them. I mean, they beat them down. They go to the Big 12 championship game. Colorado has this new wrinkle to their offense where I think they had 40,000 tight ends on the field, and they basically just ran the ball. They ran unbalanced looks the whole night. Chris Sims couldn't hit the broadside of a barn unless he was wearing black and gold. Colorado got a big lead in that game. Texas was able to get close with Major Applewhite, and then they just couldn't get it done at the end. Last year, Alabama beats the crap out of Georgia in the SEC championship game. A few weeks later, the national championship game, Georgia gets it done. So I think for a close game like USC and Utah played earlier, this is going to ring even more true. It's just going to be tough for Utah to do it again. I think a big factor in this game is obviously Caleb Williams. I've been saying for a while now, after having seen him play a little bit for USC, I obviously saw him play against Texas last year. Saw him playing some other games last year. But I said it earlier in this week, that guy is he's like a video game. He's the most impactful offensive player at the quarterback position, at least, that I feel like I've seen since Vince Young. He's like a cheat code. Watching him against Notre Dame, I felt bad for Notre Dame defensively. They would have guys in position to make a play against him, and he would just hit all the right buttons on the controller, get out of trouble, and then his ability to get the ball down the field, way down the field, on the run, with really good accuracy, that's what killed Notre Dame in that game. You know, a lot of people are talking about Lincoln Riley and his 11-1 season at USC and how great of a coach he is. And listen, I think Lincoln Riley is a good coach. I think he's obviously a good offensive mind. If USC doesn't have Caleb Williams this year, they are not 11-1, not even close. I was kind of down on the Lincoln Riley hire at USC. I thought he was running away from a situation at Oklahoma. It'll be interesting to see if he can find another Caleb Williams, whether it's through the portal or recruiting. I think Caleb Williams is a generational talent. I don't think you're going to find a guy like him anywhere. Like almost ever again. I think another big factor in this game is can USC's defense kind of do what they did against UCLA and get some stops? You know, can they get some turnovers? I think USC is going to get their points. Utah can obviously score. They've proven they can score against USC earlier in the year. But can that defense, which is not great, can it do enough to get a turnover take the ball away and get the ball back to their offense, get the ball back into Caleb Williams' hands. I think they can. I think USC is going to win this game pretty comfortably. They're 2.5-point favorite. I think they're going to cover that. I think my prediction for this game is USC 38, Utah 27. Next championship game, Big 12 championship game, you got Kansas State at TCU. TCU's a 2.5-point favorite. I'm kind of surprised the line's that close. K-State led 28-17 at halftime in Fort Worth earlier this year. And then K-State just got a lot of guys banged up. TCU scored 21 straight points in the second half. K-State scored 0. 38-28 win for TCU. It's hard to beat the same team twice, though. See it all the time. We talked about it earlier. I think keys to this one is, can Will Howard have one of those days like he has had this season where he can't miss, where his receivers can't drop the ball? Can they find Deuce Vaughn? Can they find him across the middle like they found him across the middle against Texas? Can he remain calm, and can that offensive line hold up against TCU's pressure? And then I think on the flip side, can K-State slow down TCU's running game? That's really what got him. You know, Duggan had a pretty decent game. He had better than a decent game. He had a good game against K-State the first go-round. Had a couple touchdowns. Close to 300 yards passing. The thing about Max Duggan is he's just steady. He's not going to put up any, like, typically, not consistently put up any kind of, like, blindingly amazing numbers. But he's consistent. He knows where to deliver the ball. He's got the experience to know not to make bad plays. The other thing he's got is his legs. And Max Duggan, you know, he's not the greatest athlete that's ever played quarterback, but he's really athletic. He was a 200-meter guy in high school. So for TCU, they've got, you know, the traditional running game, and they've got two pretty good backs. Both backs can hurt you. And then they've got sort of the impromptu running game with Max Duggan where, you know, he's dropping back to pass. He doesn't see it, but he sees a lot of ground in front of him. He can make you pay, and he can take it the distance. So can K-State kind of navigate all that and figure out a way to keep Max Duggan bottled up? Maybe force him into some errors? I think on the other side, from a TCU perspective, I don't think they want to be in a game with K-State where the score is close late in the game. Can TCU kind of replicate what they did last week against Iowa State and just absolutely put the game away? Really in the first quarter, but certainly by the second quarter, there wasn't a single person in Iowa State's locker room at halftime, including their coaching staff, and I don't care what anybody says, they knew the game was over. If TCU can kind of replicate that, obviously they win the Big 12 championship game. But I think the way this game goes is it's going to be like one of these ugly, dogfighty, every single possession, both offensive and defensively, counts type games. And that type of game is the type of game Kansas State wants to play. I think K-State's going to get the upset I think it's going to be 27-24 over TCU. I know TCU is a good team. There's no such thing as a not good 12-0 team. I don't know why, but there's something about them that they just don't look like a college football playoff team to me. I will say this. I had the same type of feeling about Ohio State a million years ago when they slipped. I mean, they just barely beat a whole bunch of teams that year. I believe it was Jim Tressel's second year at Ohio State. They had the biochemistry doctor guy quarterback that, again, wasn't flashy, but just kind of found ways to beat people late a lot that year. And that's the same thing TCU's done a bunch this year. So I'm not down on TCU at all. I know there's a lot of TCU fans that are just really unhappy with sort of the way the media talks about them and sort of doesn't give them the same type of respect that they feel like they deserve. They absolutely deserve to be a top 4 team right now. They absolutely deserve, if they win this game, to be in the playoffs. So we'll put all that to bed. But I don't know. There's something about them. They've played in a lot of close games. They've figured out ways to win all those close games. It almost just feels like this is going to be one of those times where they can't figure out a way to do it, or the other team just makes a play late and gets it done. I got K-State 27, TCU 24. SEC championship game, you got LSU at Georgia. Georgia's a 17.5-point favorite. I think the traditional thinking is Georgia's going to absolutely mop the floor with LSU. And I think LSU has very little chance to win this game. Offensively, they really struggled with an A&M team that's honestly just not that good. I think if you had to put a strength on that Texas Aggie team and talk about that, it would be their defense over the course of the season. But I was really surprised how dominant Texas A&M looked in that game against a team that was. I've actually seen some people this week say LSU didn't have anything to play for. What do you mean they didn't have anything to play for? They were the 5th ranked team in the country. Any sort of loss, and they win, and they're in. And there was absolutely going to be a loss because Michigan and Ohio State were playing each other. Matter of fact, there was already a loss. It happened earlier that day. And they just absolutely came out and laid an egg. So I think, for me, if I'm looking at this game, can LSU get back on track offensively? Can they be more consistent? They had one turnover against A&M. I think to win this game, they're going to absolutely have to be clean. Penalty-wise, they're going to have to be clean turnover-wise. Can LSU sort of bounce back from just a really poor defensive performance against a offense that Texas A&M scored 20 points against UMass? Army just beat UMass like a redheaded stepchild. Scored 41 points. Gave up 7 or 10 points. Army. 5-6 Army. So the game last week between A&M and LSU, definitely not indicative of both seasons, but it happened. So can LSU sort of figure out a way to slow down Georgia offensively? And then in the type of game like this, I've turnovers are always a factor, but I feel like for this game specifically, I think LSU's offense is gonna. I think they're gonna get back on track somewhat. I think they'll be better. But which defense can steal some possessions? Which defense can get some turnovers and steal possessions for their offense? I think even if LSU does all the things we just talked about, they're still not going to win the game. I got Georgia 34-17 over LSU, which is a cover for LSU. 17.5 points is a lot of points. Especially in a championship game. Not saying it can't happen. Not saying that it's never happened. Just seems like a lot of. I think LSU will cover. I think it'll be again 34-17 Georgia. This next one is just wow. ACC championship game. You got Clemson at North Carolina. Clemson's 7.5-point favorite. Both teams lost in their final week of the regular season. They're both rivalry games they lost in, but I don't – I think the North Carolina loss was probably a little more predictable for most fans. I don't think there's a lot of people that thought Clemson was going to get beat by South Carolina. Yours truly had them on upset alert, though. Sure enough. Go back and look at the podcast from – go back and look at the rundown from last week. Had Clemson on upset alert. But traditionally, most fans are thinking Clemson's going to, South Carolina blew their load. They shot their wad. There's no way they're going to beat two really good teams back to back. They went and did it. So, again, both teams coming off tough losses. From a coaching perspective, and neither one of these teams really has anything else to play for. I mean, Clemson's out of it. North Carolina never really was in it from a playoff perspective. There's always get a better win to get a better bowl position. There's definitely advantages to winning this game. I'm not suggesting that. I'm just saying mentally, are these guys still in it today as they were from a Clemson perspective, as they were when they still had a playoff shot? And from North Carolina's perspective, before they just dropped a game to North Carolina State, are they still going to have that same mental sort of positioning? Are they ready to go win a football game? I think obviously both of these coaches are experienced. Mac Brown's been coaching for a gazillion years. I think he'll have UNC ready to play. One of Mac Brown's biggest things at Texas was always don't let one loss beat you twice. And he, for the most part, was really good at getting his teams ready to bounce back. It wasn't until very late in his tenure at Texas where they started losing, multiple games back to back. It almost never happened. In fact, I don't know if it ever happened before 2010. Dabo Swinney, he's been around. Super experienced coach. You look at the matchups and sort of the players that are in this game. You got Drake May. He's the ACC Offensive Player of the Year. He's had a really good year statistically. I haven't got to see UNC play all that much, so I don't know a lot about him other than his statistics are good, and he obviously won Offensive Player of the Year. I did notice. I went back and kind of looked at his stats. He struggled with completion percentage and turnovers when they've lost. And that obviously makes sense, but it is possible for the quarterback to have a good game and still lose. But when they've lost, he struggled in both of those spots. And his completion percentage on the season is really good, especially for a redshirt freshman. So, can Drake May, can he have a good game percentage-wise, and can he protect the football? I think that's a huge key for North Carolina. And then DJ, and I'm going to butcher this. For some reason, people put an N in this name. I don't see an N in this name. Maybe I'm hearing it wrong. DJ Ugalele, but I always hear Ungalele for some reason. Anyway, DJU, quarterback at Clemson. He's just coming off an abysmal, like completely absolute trash performance against South Carolina. 27% of his passes he completed against South Carolina for 99 yards. We're not used to seeing that from Clemson quarterbacks, and he was not good last year. He's improved a lot this year from a touchdown to, interception ratio. But I don't know if he's the guy, man. It's got to be hard to follow one of the best quarterbacks that's ever played at a university, and he certainly had to do that. But really, if you look at, when Clemson started having a lot of success, they've had two really good quarterbacks in there. They haven't seen a bad quarterback or like bad quarterback play in a long time. And now they've seen it for kind of a couple years in a row. It'll be interesting to see. There was some comments after the game by Sweeney. He never really said he wasn't going to replace DJU. He kind of left the door open for maybe a Cade Klubnik introduction this Saturday. He's already shown that he's not afraid to go to him. Syracuse, I believe. They were down. They were struggling. Brought in Klubnik. Came back and won the game. I think the way he handled that was great. I think the way Klubnik handled it was great. I really wish Steve Sarkisian was less afraid to go to his backup quarterback. I think I've talked about it before. I think his refusal to go with Hudson Card, definitely in the Okie State game, maybe in that TCU game, might have cost him wins. It's probably a fine line between, you have to handle that type of situation right, because quarterbacks have big egos generally. Quarterback is a position where you have to be confident 100% of the time to be successful. And if you don't handle that situation right, you could smash a guy's confidence, and obviously you don't want to do that. So it's got to be a tough balance between, how do I do this correctly to make sure we meet the goal today, which is win the game? And how do I not shatter this guy's confidence? And maybe it has everything to do with that quarterback's experience, the relationship you have with that quarterback. I don't know. Kind of got off on a tangent there, but I think the biggest key to this game really is which coach can get his team back ready to play the best. I think both teams will be ready to play. I got Clemson 41-34 over North Carolina. North Carolina's defense is as good as their offense is. Their defense is that bad. But I think they're going to get the cover. They're 7.5-point dog. I got them losing by 7. So there's your breakdown on all the conference championship games. I'm excited. I'm also sad. This time of year is super exciting because you get to find out where your team's going bowling. Hopefully your team's in the championship mix for their conference. If you're really lucky, they're in the championship mix for the whole thing. But also we're coming down to a time where there's just going to be no more football. At least baseball's coming. All right. We got a mailbag question today. What record keeps Sark's job next year? Obviously, 5-6 was not good last year. Nobody was happy with that. I think this year, to me, I thought the Big 12 would be down, and they were, I think. There's one really good team in the Big 12 record-wise, and then everybody else is, definitely a tier below them, 2 tiers below them in terms of record. So I really thought anything from like 8-4 to 10-2 was possible for Texas this year. It would kind of just depend on, how much of the problems from last year would Sark be able to clean up in time going into this season. And oddly enough, I think what he was able to clean up, or what he needed to clean up, he did a really good job of cleaning up. The defense was pretty bad last year. The defense was really improved this year. The running game wasn't that good last year. The running game was really good this year. The offensive line play was a lot better this year. I thought a lot more consistent. I think where we kind of regressed was obviously quarterback play. Even with Hudson Card starting the season last year, and then Casey Thompson coming in and taking over that job, and then towards the end of the year, we're in the Wildcat because we have no healthy quarterbacks. I thought the quarterback play overall was much better last year than it was this year. So to me is, going into next year, and I'm going to have I'll do a whole podcast about sort of a season overview of this year and what I think the team looks like going forward and all that good stuff. We'll do that after the bowl game, after we get a little more clarity on who's leaving, who's coming back, what recruiting looks like. But I think Sark's biggest challenge going into next year is going to be, can he get Quinn Ewers developed to the point where Quinn Ewers is consistently more like OU Quinn Ewers versus more like Oklahoma State Quinn Ewers? There's no doubt if you watch the guy play, when he's good, he is really good. But when he struggles, it's really bad. And so can Sark get him more in the middle of both of those two extremes? And obviously, we want him to be as far to the great Quinn Ewers as he can be, but we need consistency. And so to me, I think without knowing a lot about what the team's going to look like, who's going to win certain jobs, who all's really leaving and who's coming back, I think he can't regress. First of all, they're not going to fire Sark next year. Unless Sark misses a bowl game next year, I don't see any way Texas fires him. He's, despite the fact that his tenure here is not, it's had a lot of disappointments. But there have been some really good things that have come out of Steve Sarkisian being at Texas. And they're all the types of things that you build on and you need to continue to have a good program. And to get the program where, Texas fans all want the program to be. And I'm sure Steve Sarkisian, Chris Del Conte wants it to be there. I think Sark's doing a lot of those things. So I think there's progress there. And I think CDC understands that. So to me, unless he just completely has a bomb season and they don't go bowl eligible, I think that's the only chance there is that Sark has anything to worry about in terms of his job, coming back for a fourth year. But I think my expectation for the team probably, 9-3. I think anything between 9-3 and 10-2 is possible next year. I think anything after that is just gravy. So thanks for the question. You guys can send me questions at horntakespodcast@gmail.com. You can send me your comments, questions, concerns, criticisms. What do you guys want to hear about on the show? We're rolling into basketball season now, full tilt. We got a big game tonight against Creighton. Baseball will start before you know it. What types of stuff do you guys want to hear? We were supposed to have Mike Roach from Horns 247 on the show for this podcast. Something came up for him in a personal manner. He wasn't able to make it. But we'll definitely have him on pretty soon. Tuesday there were a lot of guys announced they were entering the transfer portal for Texas. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about the impact of that on the team for next year. We'll talk about what that means for guys coming in. what kind of targets could Texas be targeting that are going to be in the transfer portal? The transfer portal opens Monday, December 5th, where they can officially enter the portal. And then again, early signing period is in 2 weeks, 15th through the 17th of December. So a whole lot about what Texas's roster looks like today could be vastly different in just 2 weeks. So we'll make sure we get Mike on the show. Subscribe to the podcast. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, Horn Takes Podcast. I put all the videos of the whole podcast up there. Tell your friends if you like what you hear. You can find me on TikTok at Horn Takes Podcast. And again, my email is horntakespodcast@gmail.com. You guys have a good one.